or the metrics of success are gonna
Interesting.
change. Cause like, yo, I'll take. It's like somebody gave me 20. Somebody updated their Patreon at $25. Your money, USD. That's like big. That's a month. And there's two of them that are doing this now. Now I don't know how long that maintains. It could be like a 1 month, whatever. But like,
Right.
when you start thinking about it, you're like, yo, there is alternate financing sources available. And just, it's super hard to flip the way I think we think about these things. But yo, TikTok to me, it's just link in bio. That's the only three words that matter on TikTok. Everything else is superfluous. I don't give a fuck about like TikTok ad money. YouTube is cool. Patreon link in description. Like that's kind of where my head's at with like the monetization angles because it's direct consumer shit then. And then you're basically creating connections with people and individuals. And then word of mouth net promotion supersedes algorithmic trends to this day, even according to modern marketing. So if the NPS score is the most powerful metric, which is basically a measure of how much people would recommend stuff, then you're in a situation where word of mouth still trumps everything, which is the best. If you scale down expectations on numbers, I don't know, like a million views is a million views until what does that mean?
I think you're right that changing how we think quantitatively, or adjusting how we're using these quantitative aspects of the data that we get vis-a-vis our impression of our own success. I think that's a smart point to make. I think there's a couple axes though in terms of how I think of it. Creating an ecosystem where you can get paid is important and awesome, and I'm glad that we're able to do that. That is good. I hope it continues and that bubble doesn't burst. Uh, uh, the That's one thing. Another consideration though is, are you actually, if the goal of your art making is to do no less than to transform society in some way, there is an aspect of it where your main goal, even more than you making some money from your Patreon and stuff, is to actually uh, touch nodes of consciousness, touch
Mm.
people's minds and hearts, and get them to transform their behavior. And so that's when I start to get frustrated sometimes, because my whole goal is to get people to either think about something or sometimes to pursue some actionable thing, like start composting or something like that. And when it so happens that, when even with that message that I have really deliberately put out in order to sort of plant a seed, pun intended, when that gets squelched because of some sort of surface thing or because of some mistake of the algorithm, that's when I begin to feel like we're very compromised and exposed, because we don't control what rises to the top. And what do I see the most of on any of these platforms? I see things that are trying to manipulate me. I see the things that get censored the least is like still like sex and violence type of stuff in our movies and in our, like not violence so much on the social media platforms, but certainly on Netflix and stuff, which is essentially a social media platform in many ways, and runs the same way, because those things continue to sell the most. And so while it on the surface seems like it is a vastly different world than what we had before, and in many ways it is, in other ways it merely repeats and expands the same disjointed, disproportional system that we had before, when our only hope was to get a recording contract.
That's fair. I only brought up the Patreon because of like the focus on financing in general as it exists. But yo, I think people don't fuck with Patreon unless you really do a lot of that other stuff that you're desiring to do. Like Patreon's really about providing some level of value, and entertainment value
Yeah.
only goes so far, right? Like you really have to tap into sentimentality or something else, and that's why YouTube's kind of turning into how-to land because everybody realized this education content's kind of hot, regardless of credentials. That's my fear. Is the opposite. Like I know how to optimize a blog article for page one Google. It's weird that I could write a topic, 2,000 words, on some bullshit that all I did was read this other guy's words and paraphrase them. And I'm now the
Mhm.
authority. It's my words that trump
Right.
that guy's. And that's how Google works
Right.
now. And that's how, yo, I was doing very well when I was pushing album reviews because I just made them longer than everybody. So Google thought I was more authoritative on a lot of low end keywords, and I really did well. Like crazy numbers relative to what I get on interviews. However, I enjoy the content. And that's how I pursue it. It's more of a passion for me like that. But like the reality is, if length is authority, then everything's trending towards live. and that's not even here. We're just copying international markets on some of this shit. Like, yo, we've been following China for social media trends for a very long time. It's not been the other way around. We've been copying them, and they've been pushing 8-hour lives for like half a decade. So like that's what they want. They want like live in-demand personality influencers is what I see happening. And in the metaverse, you're just going to be creating hubs of more isolation. So it's like the timeline's going to disappear. It's going to be social media without the timeline. It's going to be WhatsApp with avatars.
Yeah, I think that is true. Which also doesn't bode well for art. You know, if you think about, there's a lot of problems with this distinction, but just for the sake of conversation, the distinction that's sometimes offered between art and content. There's a lot of ways we could parse that, and there's a lot of ways you could argue that there's not a meaningful distinction between those two things. But let's say there is for the sake of discussion. And let's say for the sake of discussion that content is something like this, which is great. It's us just having a conversation. Yes, it's very casual. It's a podcast. It's content. If there is a meaningful distinction, we could say that art is an instance where, by virtue of some sort of musical inspiration, however you interpret that, whether mystically or rationally, doesn't really matter, but it is a moment of intention where you try to make something that applies in a universal way to a maximal number of situations. Maybe it's something very specific. Maybe it's art that's like really about a certain moment. But I think most of us who are true artists are trying to make stuff that will stand for all of time. And it's not just out of ego that we do so, but because it's like being a troll underneath a mountain, like, making a gem, I don't know why I got to put it in like Tolkien-y terms, but you understand what I'm saying? It's like you're making the jewel, and that jewel is shaped the way it's shaped because it should be shaped that way. You've carved something out of the void, and there it is, and you've found it. And it's getting harder and harder as the demand for more and more casual things increases, and as the taste changes in the direction of and as the technological mechanism changes in the way of foregrounding things that are less intentional, more apparently personal, as though that's more real, we're actually losing out on this other kind of reality, and it gets harder to get the art out. People who start TikToks and stuff like that to promote their music end up with, 1 million or so TikTok followers and no streams on their Spotify, or like a very small amount of streams on their Spotify, such that the technology has changed what they set out to do. Now, that's not necessarily bad, but
just to like add on to what you're saying. So I came across this guy, Badman, on fucking TikTok because he just showed up, and I realized he's making 1-minute tracks for TikTok. They're not on anywhere else, and he's doing these music videos for TikTok, and he's blowing up on TikTok. And he's gonna be a TikTok rapper. He don't give a fuck about Spotify. He's just cool. And then he could go to a show, and the way he's doing these 1-minute verses, but you can tell that they're like the fucking track chopped up and shit. So he's promoting it like this, and then Mance is gonna come through at shows later on and be able to translate that into an album. Will it work? I don't know. But he could do it live. And I do think TikTok sells live. It might not translate to Spotify, but I seen a 1-2 person, and I look into them, and they're just fucking TikTok stars, and they're playing to like fucking real numbers of people. So like TikTok sells live. So it's like it's might not translate into like some ways, but there's something to it where like it depends on how you monetize. And I think what happens is most people don't create funnels. And if you don't create a funnel, then you're just getting reach. And I think people got blinded by the promotional demon. I caught at that thing where you be so caught up on numbers that's all you care about. But like, technically you should be trying to sell a shirt with your music video, or, a something, or like, I'm not even there yet. I'm still trying to build up my like ecosystem so I can be making big man moves like that. But the way I see it is like everything you do should be intention. That's because I don't know, I've been thinking about Jay-Z and shit and how he makes his moves. Like everything is so intentional, everything gets tied to it, nothing's random. And so much as artists, we just throw shit out the wall. And I'm not saying everything has to be capitalistic, but social media is a promotional tool, so like it is capitalistic in nature. And I think people treat it like it's something that it's not. Like it's some community. I'm like, nah, it's literally just we make content for each other, and everyone's just pretending like they're not content creators, and some of us are more cognizant that we are content creators. And
my point is not that it doesn't have that funnel. Like
I'm saying most people don't use the funnel. They just don't do it. So
Right.
you don't see the results because most people misuse the platform was where I was going with that. I just kind of get distracted along the way. So no, I hear what you're
Well,
saying.
even like you're even the particular way that you phrased it like makes, I feel like, the point that I want to make come into sharper relief, which is this: you said it's a means, but my point is that it's an instance of a thing where the means actually becomes the end in itself. It becomes what people are making their content for, even if we're all getting into it just for the sake of like, oh, it's a means to an end, so that, but that so that dominates all of our lives more and more. I am making a generalization, but artists more and more are thinking about, how am I going to make this go viral, which is not the same as how do I make a good song. I'm not saying that people aren't still doing both, but there is a trend socioculturally and psychologically, I feel like, toward the means, the portal becoming the point.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Even subconsciously, you know what I mean? And it's as we go further, you're talking about this person who's succeeded by making 1 minute songs. Now 1 minute is really good for TikTok. Is 1 minute enough to, going back to what we're talking about, to really give a nuanced point, you know what I mean, to really like shine and to show a whole like discursive argument, that you're making,
But
or to really educate somebody about
so
something they need to be educated about? Can it translate to all those different things?
maybe. My
That's the
answer
question.
is maybe. So what I've noticed about TikTok is it's not really just one minute video. It's often themed videos. And so like you can just put out like 14 1 minute videos. And what I do believe happens is people absolutely go through all 14. So imagine you grab the same beat and it's the same song and it's part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, or you sequence it in a way where you have the same aesthetic so people can see it. That's what he did. And you could hear it. It's the same flow, it's the same beat, and he just explored idea of, and it wasn't bad. It like I wouldn't bring him up if I thought it was trash. I was kind of low-key jealous, like shit, how do I do some cool shit like this? Because the other side to the coin is, yo, if all the people gonna be doing this shit anyway, and this is where the masses are, and the goal, to me at least, with art has a degree of communication elements attached to it. Without communication, I mean, I know that there is people who do art without communication, but for me, art has a communication element attached to it. If nobody hears it, like, I don't know. So I feel like there's a way to, without compromising what you're trying to do in the bigger picture, just create pieces of it. So have the TikTok version that leads to the experience, and the experience is wherever you bring people. And then if you can get people entranced in your brand, I do believe, yeah, you go on live. That's where really I think people do it. Don't forget about the lives where you can spit there for like an hour and a half and just shoot the shit with the same
Absolutely.
people. And
Yeah.
I'm not trying to even challenge what you're saying, because yo, I watch people all the
Yeah.
time chase Spotify algorithms with the same level of fervor of what you're describing on TikTok. So it's like we just do it. I'm with you.
I wasn't, nor was I disagreeing with you in the first place either. It wasn't even limited to TikTok. And I'm glad you brought up that. It's like, the point is not whether these things can be effective disseminators of really important and really substantial work. They definitely can. They definitely are. The thing to ask oneself, I think, as one does it is, am I using this as a tool, or is the tool using me? And I think sometimes that gets muddy, even in myself, where I realize that, oh, I'm not asking what the song wants anymore. I'm asking what TikTok wants in theory, to try and, and that just takes up so much more of my brain space than it did in, earlier stages of my songwriting. And I'm sometimes troubled by that. That's not to say that I'm writing off the effective potential, of that medium. You know what I mean?
Nah, and I think everything you're saying is super valid. This is a great conversation. It usually doesn't go like this on the Zoom. I love your mind, dude. It's fucking great. I see why you got grant money. Um, but yeah, that was definitely worth bringing up. He won the end of the week grant, the Vice Versa's grant, last year in the summer, I believe. That's actually where I got introduced to him in the first place. I was on the Zoom call where they announced the winners, which I was like, I gotta talk to this dude. This is some shit that's right up my alley. Not often is the shit right up my alley, okay? Like sometimes it's really good, but a little bit not my cup of tea. And then we chit-chatted that one time, but like, yeah, no, I got a little distracted there. All I have to say, like the way the conversation flows, I just think it's dope because people think about this shit. I'm sure every creator, struggles with this algorithm question. I literally saw like 2 or 3 posts about it this week of people who satirize it. Some people think ignore the algorithm, make the art will sell itself. Some people think you gotta have the algorithm, etc. And then I think even yo, fuck, he just brought up organic growth. Organic growth, I think people get confused. Organic doesn't mean free. It just means organic. It takes over time and natural occurring, but often there's still cost attached to organic, where I think a lot of people get that concept twisted. They hear words, and because organic is often used against paid when talking about social media marketing, everyone got a little bit confused about how the world works. But even a good organic marketing post has time, effort, tools, things put into it in order to run that campaign. So like, I think people are facing a jargon issue too, where I don't think anyone really understands. Even myself, I feel often inadequate lately when I'm embracing new technology like the mobile world as it takes over. And I went on like Clubhouse and I got mad confused for a minute. Like, it's not like I just felt out of place and shit. And so like it's almost like a visual jargon as much as an oral jargon. Honestly, like when somebody in their 30s plays a video game for the first time and has no idea how anything works.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so like this is where we're all at, because then all of a sudden throw in VR and the metaverse, which apparently Meta is about to throw down our throats.
Right.
It's wild times.
It is wild times. Backtracking just a little bit, yeah, let's to linger on it longer. Shout out to the Versus Project.
Right.
Shout out to the legacy of Vice Versus. Really, still just every time I think about the honor of getting that support, I feel fortified and backed up. It's like it was a really good. It was a very transformative thing for me because it was right when I was stopping teaching in order to pursue art full time, and it just felt like the legacy of Vice and the whole End of the Week family being like, all right, we got you, let's do this, you know what I mean? And that's carried me through this experiment, which, and actually that segues into something we're talking about, because there while there are quantitative aspects to this, there's also qualitative aspects to this. And to build a Patreon with people that you don't know personally but that are supporting your art is awesome. But then there is a qualitative difference between that and community that we have here, where it's like, you and I are in the same place, but we're bound by something that is real people really interacting in a system of mutual support. It's community in a very distinct way. And I guess that's probably the litmus test, as you're building your online presence, do you feel like you're building community, or are you building audience, and all those two things the same? Are you building, what are you building, and what are its qualitative aspects, I guess, is how to ask it, to tie those threads together.
Yeah, that's a big point too. I feel like End of the Week's a great testament to community. Like, it's like a worldwide conglomerate, right? And so you pop around, and if there's an End of the Week there, you can be like, yo, I'm from End of the Week, insert place, and then you're good. And like there's that element to it. However, I agree with your whole point on the I focus on community because I believe that's how you really keep it. It's like, yo, look at all the old OGs, the ones that are no longer famous. They got those 5,000 people who buy every mixtape they drop so that they can keep eating. And I'm like, to me, that's always been kind of the aspiration, is like, how do I get old and keep it a little bit? But
totally.
I do think that like having a knowledge of how the tools work is good, and playing to it is good for education. I mean, I do believe that, yo, the short video shit's taking over. I don't know why, but like, I don't know if it's an attention span thing or if it's just like fucking drugs and whatever, because I feel like it's more like drugs than it is. I get more hits like I like taking tokes off joints when I'm watching these little 1 minute bite-sized shits than when I do the long form. But the long form shit lets you explore everything, which is dope, which is why I love it. Like, conversations like this can't happen in a minute, but it's also hard to convince people to come and give up that much time these days. So it's like this weird balance. It's a finger thing. Shit, eh? I never thought about that. this action may really be what I'm addicted to. That's an interesting point.